Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks to the ranking member, and thanks to Mr. Halpern. For those of you who don't know, we're getting reunited on the Rules Committee because we were on the House Rules Committee. Hugh was there as a great staffer, as I was my first 2 years on Rules Committee, so it's very nice to see you again, as always. Let me ask you, I'll kind of jump on to about the safety of the building, and I noticed in your remarks that you discussed the telework policy. I'm sure, and if this question has already been asked, I apologize, but I am interested in it. There was a GAO study that showed that 17 of the 24 federal agency headquarters that were reviewed are utilizing an estimated average of 25% or less of their respective buildings' capacity. Obviously, it's very costly to the taxpayer to be paying for the full use of the buildings that are not actually being utilized. What is the percentage of your employees that are working remotely? I'll ask that first.
Sure. So about 2/3 of our teammates come to work every single day. They're manufacturing or production employees, so it's about 1/3 of the agency that works either remote or hybrid.
And then what are those policies for the remote worker? Is it a certain amount of days a week, hours? How does that?
So we are focused on getting results, and it's unlike a lot of typical agencies. GPO operates as a business, so it's really easy to see whether we're being successful or not. We do have a telework and remote work policy in place. So for telework folks, they need to come back into the office a couple of days a week. But for some of our remote folks, they're working fully remote and doing it successfully. So let me give you one example. Prior to the pandemic, we had about 12 regional offices, and they were put there because originally our customers needed to come to those offices to review things. Nobody had been doing that for years. When we shifted to a remote model during the pandemic, we figured out that actually worked for that group. That's about 100 folks. They're now fully remote. And
are the 12, not to interrupt, but are the 12 offices still open then?
No.
And so you closed that?
We closed them, saved the taxpayer about $1 million a year in rent and overhead. And we're still having great success. That particular unit this year is anticipated to bring in about, or for the last fiscal year, we'll hit just shy of $500 million in total contracts. And that's a new record for them. And we expect to see continued growth out of that group. It's also allowed us to recruit nationwide, which is something that we couldn't do previously. So if we have a group that is servicing East Coast customers, I can have a member of that group who lives in Hawaii as long as they're willing to work the hours needed to support those customers. So for us, and I can't speak to other agencies, but for us, telework and remote work has helped us with recruiting, it has helped us with retention, and it has helped us with productivity.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I noted in your statement that you mentioned about a lot of your workers were reaching the age of retirement, soon to be. And since work has sort of changed since COVID in a lot of circumstances, certainly in the federal government, is it, and this is a generalized question I think would be interesting to know just across the board, because I think private sector too, is it a requirement now that you offer the flexibility to the newer worker coming in? Is this an expectation? Are you finding that?
It depends on the role. So, as I said, about 2/3 of our folks come to work every day because you can't take a printing press home.
Right.
So I think in our manufacturing role,
especially if you're printing money, you don't want to take the printing.
That's a different group. But
I got you off there.
No.
Sorry.
It's so for our manufacturing employees, for our production employees, there's an expectation that you're going to work those hours.
Right.
I was discussing in my oral statement, we are looking at different ways of approaching even that. So for instance, the folks who print passports, we've shifted to a 4-day-a-week, 10-hour-a-day schedule. Works for us, works for them. Similarly, we are really close to standing up a weekend, basically 40-hour shift in our Mississippi production facility to see if that can be successful for those teammates who may want to work a longer day, but fewer days a week. That's the same kind of flexibility that we can use in a production environment that we can also use in the more traditional knowledge worker roles. And, you know, we asked our first class of recent grads, and we've got some of those folks behind me. We said, you know, does the availability of remote work, did that factor into your decision to choose GPO? And almost 3/4 of them said that it did.
It did. Last question, if I could. You mentioned passports. I'm curious to know: are we going to go to a digital passport? Is that in our future?
So the
people behind you are smiling.
because they're more closely involved with some of that planning than I am. But the short answer is that the current version of the passport that we just started producing in April for our State Department customer is probably going to be good for about 10 to 15 years. That was the length of the last one. We are in discussions, both the State Department and GPO supporting them, with all of the other international partners about what the next passport looks like. It is likely that that will continue to be tied to a physical document. There may be a digital component to it, but you will still need a physical document keyed to that. So I think we've got probably a good another 20 years or so of still having some sort of physical document.
Thank you.
I'm good at telling the future, but not that good.
Thank you. Thanks for all the hard work you all do. Thank you.
Very good. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Halpern,